Right now, we're talking to Cate Blanchett. So, Cate, welcome.
Welcome back. Thank you.
Welcome back. Last time you were here, it was for Blue Jasmine. You won the Oscar.
That's
so
right.
I think I'm your good luck charm.
Yes, it's like a little wound in here.
Yeah, just have another Oscar now. We'll only have you back when that's happening for you. What do you do with those Academy Awards, the two that you have?
One's garishly on display at home, and the other one's in a museum of moving image in my hometown in Melbourne.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one? Was that the Katharine Hepburn one or the Blue
Yes,
Jasmine?
the Katharine Hepburn one. I wasn't expecting to win another one, so I just, yeah. But
Oh, now it's just happening all the time.
No, well, I mean, look, I'm very proud of the film. I mean, Carol's a labour of love for everybody. The project's been around for a long, long time. Phyllis Nage wrote the screenplay. I thought it was 12 years ago, but I think she actually wrote it more like 18 years ago.
Wow.
So it's
Well, you were just an infant
long...
and would have no idea.
Exactly.
And could not be cast, ever.
No. I had to wait till I was old enough.
Let's start with you just explaining who Carol is.
Well, it's based on a Patricia Highsmith novella. It's her first book, and it was written under a pseudonym in the 1950s about two women, an older woman, upper middle class woman, and a young shop girl who's an aspiring set designer. In the film, she's a photographer, who fall in love. They meet over a counter in a department store when my character's buying a present for her young child, and they strike up a friendship. And they fall in love, and Carol's a married woman with a child, and Therese is a woman who's had very little experience. And there's no language around the feelings they have for one another, so it takes a while for them to realize that, in fact, this is a love akin to the love of Brief Encounter, Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard. It's a full-blown epic romance.
Well, it is, and I think what's exciting about it, and in those moments, is that you've had experience before with another woman.
My character.
Your character. Well, no, I'm not going to get you back into that.
I
You already got in trouble.
Who cares?
Somebody
Trouble.
said that.
I mean, what
did you say that
decade
to
are we
Variety?
in?
It was like
I can't remember.
it was something where they said Cate Blanchett admits
obviously does not translate.
She's had relationships with lots of women. I remember.
God
that.
forbid.
That was it.
I mean, it's really funny. It's interesting. You know, we're described. The film takes place in the 50s. You know, pre-Eisenhower 50s. You know, it's not so shiny. It's a very sort of spare landscape. But that kind of love was criminal. Well, it was considered criminal between homosexual men, but between women it was just sort of an extension of female hysteria.
Well, see, that's not fair.
Whereas now, I mean, you think we've moved on in most Western-speaking countries, but you know, you still get asked the question, and somehow it's news. You know,
it's
anyway.
News. Yes. Well, your relationships were friendships with these women,
Who
as
cares?
opposed to you doing.
I'm an
Nobody
actress.
cares.
It's like playing a part.
I'm playing a part. Well,
you know, I played Mary Mapes as a journalist. No one asked me how many years I'd spent at journalism school, but somehow it's one's sexual persuasion is you're meant to wear it on your sleeve. And that's what I loved about playing Carol, is that it's not only she's a product of the era that she's in, and obviously it's a Patricia Highsmith story, and love is the crime here. There's a big obstacle the women have to get over in order to consummate their love for one another. And Carol is a very, very deeply private person. So she doesn't wear her sexuality on her sleeve. And the interesting thing about the novel and the screenplay, I think, which is very different from Todd's Far From Heaven, is that it's not about the kind of people dealing with feeling that their feelings for someone of the same gender is a perverted, abnormal thing. They feel very at home with it. It's the society that has the problem with it.
Yeah, well, in the sense, though, of Therese that Rooney Mara is playing, this is all
her performance is incredible.
But it's new to her. And there's just this scene that it makes me crazy with happiness, that I just love it, because it's for you two as actors to do. But she's just had a really bad weekend with Carol, where there's been tension.
Yes.
You know, she's been away. She's met Carol's husband and daughter.
Yes.
And she doesn't know what to do, and she doesn't know what she's feeling.
Yes, because of course Carol's husband does not sit well with the fact. I mean, any woman that walks into the house, because he's been down that road.
Yeah.
Sarah Paulson plays Carol's best friend, and they've had a liaison in the past, and so there's a constant sense of suspicion that Haj has when any girl, and then this young girl walks into the house, and he thinks, uh-oh, who's trouble?
Here it comes again.
Todd and Phyllis Nage, who wrote the screenplay, have not demonized the men.
Right.
In this. Carol and Haj have had a loving relationship, but it's run its course. It's it's a dry river, and it's not that Haj is a bad person or that Carol is a dysfunctional, crazy, hysterical person. It's just that it hasn't worked, and Haj is as trapped by his, the 1950s version of who a man should be, as Carol is trapped by notions of femininity in that time.
But what's happening with Carol, who is really put together, she doesn't go
On the
outside.
outside.
On the outside. Inside, it's all roiling, but out there it's put together. And so we're seeing, even though Therese is a shop girl who wants to be a photographer, they're living in a world where you dress according to what the world expects of you.
Yes.
It's this sense of, this is how I should look, and you both have to get past that. Sometimes there are nude scenes in movies where you go, what's that there for? What is it here?
Yes.
But here,
Yeah.
it's that time where it's all stripped away.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide behind.
People talk about there's a sex scene between the two characters, which is so important. It's really, we talked a lot about it and the function it had and the way we were going to shoot it. And Todd's very collaborative in letting everybody, the cast included, into the way the film is going to be shot. But what I love about what you're referring to is that Carol is an object of desire for Therese. And so we wanted to create something, a silhouette for Carol that was mysterious and alluring so that Therese could be objectively drawn to her. And then the filmmaking flips over and becomes much more subjective, and you get inside Carol's head as Therese kind of reaches a greater point of maturity and understands the complexity of Carol's situation. She can't fall headlong in love with this girl. She knows the consequences. She has a child. She's being blackmailed by her husband's family, and it's a very complicated world. But you don't know that. When the first time she walks in, you see what Therese sees, which is a woman who's impeccably dressed and impeccably put together, and then hopefully that's alluring enough that it draws an audience in.
What Patricia Highsmith did in the book, and what you do, I think, even more eloquently in the movie without words, is the sense that they don't want to live in their private world. They want to find a way to live in the real world and be who they are.
Well,
and
to be authentically...
That's a happy ending.
Yeah, to be authentically who they are. And Carol is presented with, as I guess Therese would be if she was older, and in a similar situation. She's been presented with a terrible, tragic choice. It's like, I always... Does she keep custody or access to her child and potentially lose her own sanity, or does she sort of rescind that right? It's a terrible thing to ask of a parent.
It's a terrible choice.
Simply because of their sexual persuasion.
Yeah. Well, what you said before, it was hysteria that women got accused of.
It was a dysfunction. Kyle and I talked a lot about this with Todd, it's almost like at that time dealing with someone who has a mental illness, because it's a perversion, it's a dysfunction that somehow they can be cured. I guess that's why people join the Church of Scientology. It's just like these things continue on in today's world, and certainly in my country, we're still not at the point where same-sex marriage can, there's a lot of hurdles still for people to jump over.
Well, I think it is. You look at it and it's 1952 and we get less concerned. We know that it's a criminal act.
Yes.
Why it's a criminal act for men, but for women it's just a
it's not even accorded the status of being a criminal act.
Even then, women were still fighting for what kind of parity was.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get into a criminal act of what
But the wonderful thing about what Todd has made, and it feels like he's made, I am such a drooling fan of, as I am of everything that Rooney has done, but Todd has been such an outsider, and it's given him such a fantastic, unique take on the world filmically. But it seems like a real synthesis of his work, this film, and only he could have made it a film that transcends the political. And I think that what an audience is seeing is an epic love story, and so that all of that stuff, including the externals, even the period drops away, and you just see people falling in love.
They don't really have the language. There's no.
No.
We don't hear lesbian said. We don't hear.
There's a great scene in where Therese goes into a record store to buy Carol a Christmas present, and she sees two women, I suppose, of the kind of the butch femme silhouette, and she thinks, I don't know what that is, but I don't know that I'm that. And that this is the wonderful thing about the film, and I think the proliferation of stories that are being told at the moment in cinema and in literature, and that no longer does that describe many different types of relationships. That a film like this no longer has to stand for all of them.
But you've had a lot of them, but this is an incredible year. I mean, you start this year, you're in Cinderella, and you're the wicked step.
Was that this year?
It was. You see, I'm here for you.
Jesus.
It really was.
I am so
you
sorry.
Are doing
That's
that.
too much me.
You're the wicked stepmother who's not really that wicked.
No. Well, we're all a bit wicked, aren't we?
Well, we all are.
But I mean, it's easy to play someone who's out and out evil, but it's harder to sort of try and get behind that choice. And yes, it's a fairy tale, an unabashed sort of classic retelling of that story, which I love doing with Kenneth, and Lily James is amazing.
Well, then Truth, you do Truth.
I
It's
know.
like it's the opposite of the fairy tale. It's this documentary, actual probing into this character of this woman who was Dan Rather's producer at CBS, and all of that happens in this world.
Yeah, and it was not a pocket of. I mean, I knew about them breaking the Abu Ghraib story, Mary and Dan Rather, and I knew about the Bush Guard story, but I didn't know about the fallout of 60 Minutes and the proximity of CBS to Viacom, and that of course it all going south because it was in such a toxic political atmosphere, the second Bush election. And I think the stone rolls so quickly now, as it were, that we forget about the ramifications of just sweeping all of this stuff under the carpet.
We had a great fun with Saoirse Ronan the other day, and I talked to her about Hannah, which the two of you did together. And I said, you and Kate, you could just be, fighting for that Oscar. And she said,
"Why don't you get out of here? You've got like 6 already."
And she did this thing, and she said, "I've had experience doing that."
What a year! I mean, there's some really incredible films, and inside them some amazing female performances. I mean, Brea's astonishing in the room, and the little boy. Talk about chemistry. I mean, that's incredible between the two of them. But Saoirse in Brooklyn. I mean, John Crowley has directed such a beautiful, beautiful, heartbreaking film. My husband and I, when we saw it, reached, for each other's hands, going, "I remember when we fell in love." It's really beautiful, and it's.
So you don't have this feeling of competition.
I think the media creates that stuff, and
it's all us. We are despicable.
I mean, there's 3 films we've just mentioned. Carol, Room, and Brooklyn, and all of those films. I don't know the filmmaker of Room, but I hazard a guess. Like the other 2, they've been labours of love, made on a shoestring, and you want them in a very crowded time of year to find their audience, and suddenly the media places them in a competitive relationship. They're very, very different enterprises, but they're all utterly unique, and there's a compliment somewhere if people include them in that circle of conversation or competition.
Well, I guess so, but I mean, Saoirse at 21 just didn't. She wasn't having any of that. She was just going to have fun with what it was she was doing, which was very
And it was
healthy.
really important to her. It's the first time she's played an Irish character, and it's going back amongst her own and telling a sort of quintessential Irish story.
So you get to see a lot of these movies despite the fact that you're working all the time.
I consume them as well as make them. I'm lucky I get to do what I love. I love cinema. So it's. I mean, I'm not existing in. I know I'm sitting here talking about too much about myself, but I'm. But I do enjoy other people's work.
But then you do, and so that's kind of rare. I'm just saying that.
I mean, the other thing, I don't know if you've had the filmmakers in, but Son of Saul.
Not yet, no. But
Incredible.
it's a wonderful.
Incredible.
Look at you.
I mean,
We've done
really.
our year-end wrap-up of
I
what
could.
to say.
I mean, move over,
Kick
Peter
me
Travis.
out. Yes, it's all about
Yeah.
Cate Blanchett's picks. Well, this show always ends in song, as you know.
It does. So what are you going to sing for me this evening?
I'll sing whatever you start me with. I thought because there was a new baby that there must be a song that you were singing to her.
I've been singing Mama Cass to her.
Oh, I love that.
But
I
I was
do that
thinking
with
Dream
you.
a Little Star, I'm thinking maybe that's not the most appropriate song to Dream a Little Dream of Me. I mean, it sounds like Mommy Dearest.
Shining.
Above you, night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of Mommy.
Whoa!
I mean,
That
I've been
scared
thinking
me.
maybe I should change my
That
tune
went back
a little
to
bit.
Cinderella, the
I know,
wicked
it's
stepmother.
probably.
I don't want you frightening her.
No.
That's really important.
Poke her away.
Anyway, Kate, thank you so much.
Thank you.